From MTN News, you're watching Montana This Morning.
The Bozeman School Board will reconsider a transition date for middle school students throughout the district to return to full-time in-person learning. I'm Gabby Crevitt, and I'll have that story coming up.
Plus, this year staying healthy around Thanksgiving has to do with a lot more than food. Coming up, we show you how to calculate your risk for getting COVID-19 if you plan to attend a traditional gathering.
Just ahead of 6:30 on this Monday, Chet Lehman, Holly Brantley, Matt Elwell with you here. We had not a bad weekend weather-wise. A little breezy on Sunday, but that was to be expected.
It was. The winds were picking up a little bit, but really a pretty mild setup yesterday. Today's going to be mild as well.
Good.
Mainly seeing comfortable temperatures this morning. Yeah, maybe a little crisp. You need jackets and coats, but there is an isolated chance of a passing snow shower for the morning. It's not great. Just a weak wave of energy trying to roll through mainly east of the divide. Daytime temperatures today right into the low 40s. I expect to see lighter winds for the afternoon as well. Man, that is beautiful looking out on the horizon.
Yes,
there.
it is. That is gorgeous.
It is. I think today's going to be pleasant. Warmer temperatures tomorrow, and then a chance of showers. We're going to break it all down for you, of course, step by step in just a few minutes.
All right, thanks, Matt. Well, your local headlines now. The Bozeman School Board meets tonight to discuss postponing the date for the transition to 5-day in-person learning for Bozeman's middle schools.
This is happening as COVID cases spike across the county, state, and even the nation. MTN's Gabby Crevitt has a preview of tonight's meeting.
You may remember back in early October, the Bozeman School Board voted in favor of transitioning from the blended model to full-time in-person learning for all grade bands. Now, those target dates were different depending on each grade level. And on Monday, the school board will be reconsidering the target date for middle schoolers across the district. In a notice released by the Bozeman School District Administration, the deputy superintendents recommend the school board postpone the transition date for middle schoolers from November 23rd to January 11th of next year. One of the main reasons is a trend the Gallatin City County Health Department and schools across the county have been experiencing: a shortage of staff and substitute teachers.
We've had a number of schools that have made decisions to go to remote learning, and that is happening primarily because they don't have the staffing to keep things going in the way that they want to, and because they have cases in the school.
PK through 5th grade students transitioned on November 2nd, but the deputy superintendents say that childcare needs at the middle school level aren't as high. The report also acknowledges the COVID positivity rate in the community is currently at an all-time high, something that teachers have voiced some concern about in school board and board of health meetings.
And I can tell you, teachers, much like nurses and doctors and techs in the hospital, are putting everything they can into this, but they're tired and they're stressed, and some of them are scared.
Finally, the notice says initial district data shows the blended model contributes to lower student and staff COVID quarantine rates than full-time in-person learning. And on Monday evening, the school board will also be discussing the performance evaluation of Superintendent Bob Connors, who's been on administrative leave since November 2nd. Reporting in Bozeman, Gabby Crevitt, MTN News.
Now, Gabby tells us, depending on the superintendent's performance evaluation, the board is scheduled to determine appropriate action if it's needed.
Well, while the presidential transition continues, one thing remains certain: President Trump will remain in office until January 20th.
So what could the president still do between now and then? Our Joe St. George is in Washington, explains.
We are officially in what's known as lame duck status here in Washington, D.C., the period after the election but before the inauguration. But President Trump still has plenty of power. Here are 5 big things President Trump can do between now and the end of his presidency. Number 1, he can issue pardons. Number 2, he can continue to appoint officials. He can remove and fire top government officials as well. He can order military action, and he can still issue executive orders. Now, in regards to pardons, President Trump could very well pardon advisors like Michael Flynn or Paul Manafort. He could also try to preemptively pardon members of his own family, as ongoing investigations are still being conducted in places like New York. President Trump can also appoint individuals to top posts that President-elect Joe Biden won't be able to undo. For instance, it appears President Trump will get his pick for a top job at the Federal Reserve. Judy Sheldon, a former informal advisor to the Trump campaign, is expected to be confirmed by the Senate before Trump leaves office. This post has the power to influence your interest rates on your savings account or mortgage for years to come. And then there is the power President Trump has in firing people. He has already fired Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. Since the election, he could fire the FBI director next. As for executive orders, President Trump still has the power, and he may use it to direct COVID funds to certain areas. But as soon as he takes office, President-elect Joe Biden would also have the power to issue executive orders, and he could make any President Trump executive order null and void. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
6:34 now. Montana health officials echo new Centers for Disease Control recommendations when it comes to Thanksgiving.
If you're thinking about taking part in a large gathering or traveling, don't. Health officials warn large traditional gatherings like this could lead to positive results, and in this case, that is not a good thing. Matt Kelly, Gallatin City County Health Officer, says keeping celebrations within your household is even more urgent as cases surge locally, including days of record-breaking positive cases. Now, if the warnings don't hit home yet, take a look at this map. It is a color-coded guide to your risk level if you choose to attend a large gathering. The map was created by researchers from the Georgia Institute of Technology and Stanford University. You can calculate your chances of getting COVID-19 by putting in the county where you would be celebrating and then the size of the event, anywhere from 10 to 5,000 people. Then you can see your risk for getting COVID-19, and that risk grows the bigger that gathering gets. The map calculates risk by assuming the case rate is 10 times higher than reported. So for Gallatin County, a gathering of 10 people puts your risk level at 73%. Increase that to a gathering of 15 people and your risk level jumps to 86%. How about Yellowstone County? Gather with 10 people and your risk of getting COVID-19 is 61%. But what if you gather with 15 people? That risk becomes 76%. Health officials on the local and national levels stressing that to families, the risk just isn't worth it.
Nobody wants to bring the virus home for the holidays. And the things that we're doing now, know that the virus is out there in the community and know that those exposures are going to be impacting people 5, 10, and 14 days down the road from now.
Recommendations are that get-togethers should be limited to people within your same household. Now, if you do plan to travel or attend a dinner, the CDC says to reduce your risk by wearing a mask, stay 6 feet away from others who do not live with you, and of course, wash your hands and use hand sanitizer. We have more on that topic tomorrow as we look at how to have a healthier holiday all around, all week on Montana This Morning. Man, after the year we've had virtually, a virtual event isn't really new territory. But if you're planning an online Thanksgiving, experts at Eventbrite have some tips to make it smoother. First, decide what platform you want to use. Eventbrite says Zoom is better for smaller, more intimate events, but if you're having a big blowout, Twitch or YouTube may be a better option. Also, try to send out an agenda in advance to help others plan ahead. A few things you can include are a cocktail hour when it's time to eat, and trivia and bingo games. Experts encourage setting up festive dress codes just to make the event feel more real.
6:37 now, and other headlines. Today, Montana Attorney General Tim Fox is expected to announce Big Tobacco has reached a settlement regarding $43 million in funds owed to Montana. John Riley has more information about the history of the litigation.
Over 2 decades ago, Montana joined every other state and territory in the country to sue the largest tobacco companies for decades of deception about health hazards of smoking. Montana entered into their own settlement agreement with the companies in 1998. In exchange for dropping the lawsuit, the companies promised annual payments to the state and to restrict marketing practices. The payments from the tobacco companies fund the Children's Health Insurance Program, Medicaid, smoking prevention, cessation programs, suicide programs, and more. In 2003, the tobacco companies began disputing payments of state settlements and withholding owed funds to Montana, arguing disputes have to be settled with all states before making that year's payment. The Attorney General's office prevailed in a lawsuit for the 2004 mispayment of $3.3 million in 2018. And in April of this year, Fox announced the state would take the tobacco companies to court over the $43 million that is owed to Montana under the original settlement from payments withheld dating back to 2005. Tobacco has been costly for the Treasure State. According to the CDC, around $440 million has been spent on tobacco-related healthcare costs. And around 1,600 Montanans die every year from tobacco-related illnesses. Reporting in Helena, John Riley, MTN News.
Well, a White House coronavirus advisor is telling people in Michigan to rise up against COVID restrictions. Why he's saying that and the reaction to it coming up.
But first, let's check in with Tony DeCopel to see what's coming up at 7 o'clock on CBS This Morning.
Good morning. Ahead on CBS This Morning, as coronavirus cases increase at an alarming rate, we have breaking news on a new vaccine that could be available before the new year. Plus, a newly named member of President-elect Joe Biden's COVID task force discusses the virus's possible impact on Thanksgiving and how he thinks we can get the pandemic under control. Also, Gale sits down with former President Barack Obama in his first in-depth conversation since Mr. Biden won the election. You're going to hear his deep concerns over the country's political divide after Americans went to the polls. And Kim Ang, the new general manager of the Miami Marlins, joins us. We'll talk about what it means to be the first woman to be general manager of any professional male sports team in North America. We'll see you at 7.